1. This woman came in to have lunch around 1 p.m. with someone she was meeting with, and she sat at the table for like 20 minutes waiting for her friend to arrive. She showed up eventually, and they both started talking for the next 25 minutes, without even bothering to look at the menus on the table. I went to greet them and ask if they needed a couple more minutes to take a look at the menu, and they said they haven't even looked. More time passes as they kept chatting away. We were going to close up soon. After about 5 minutes, I checked up on them to see if they wanted to order. They both said they needed more time. I gave them another 5 to 10 more minutes before heading there again, as we do close soon, and I wanted to make sure they had enough time to eat without rushing them. They started getting annoyed that I kept coming over to see if they were ready, and then I left to give them more time again. Then, finally, both their menus were closed, and they were ready to order. I walk over, ready to take the orders, and punch it in the system for everything to come out, and give them their food before we closed. They only had about 45 minutes to eat. They were eating like super slow and kept chatting for the longest times. About 15 minutes before closing the restaurant, I told them we were getting ready to close up soon, and that I can get them takeout boxes if they needed it. They said, okay. I get them their takeout boxes, and they leave it on the table for the next 10 minutes talking and eating, and I come up to them again to let them know that we are now closed. And I need them to pack up and cash out, as no one will be in the restaurant to cash them out later. This woman had the audacity to say, I would like to finish my lunch before I cash out. And I tell her we're closed now and I need you to cash out because I don't get paid to be here on my lunch. She argued with me saying, I won't pay until I've had my lunch, and I just find this very rude and disrespectful. I was like, okay. Then I went to see if my manager can talk to her because I clearly had no luck getting her out of the restaurant. I had to get the manager to come out and speak to them, and they looked super annoyed and paid immediately, just because they're older than me. If anyone has any tips on how to deal with customers like this, I would appreciate the help, as this interaction today made me upset for my whole lunch break. 2. What do you think about the kitchen tip out? Do they deserve more front of house tips? How much is enough? What's your position in the restaurant? How long have you been working in the service industry? And what do you feel about this? I'll go first. I'm 40, been working in the industry for over 20 years. Went from server to barback to bartender. I genuinely do feel that back of house are completely amazing people who bust their asses working, but they generally don't have the personality or skills to be a server or bartender, and our tips should belong only to us because we aren't tipped on the food but on the service. It's been argued that if the food was bad or the kitchen was slow, it would affect our tips, so we should tip out as to drive the kitchen to care more about what they put out, and that a good kitchen will garner more tips. I do agree to a point. Yes, if the food is terrible and or kitchen was slow, it would affect our tips. But that is why we are the go-between between the kitchen and the customer. It is literally our job to communicate a table's woes to the kitchen and help them keep on track. You don't know how many line cooks I fought with because an order was up past 40 minutes and my table was getting antsy. Perhaps that would change if they had a stake in the tip, perhaps not. I'd like everyone's take on this. Please keep it respectful. I don't want to start a war. I just want a conversation. Why or why not? I tip my current kitchen 3% of food sales, generally like $50 split between two of us a weekend night. And I'm a bartender. My cook, we have one, kills it and deserves every cent, but I don't think I would work where I did if it were higher. My $25 split would equal about 10% of my tips, sometimes less, and I feel that's more than fair. I feel they deserve a raise from their employer, not front of house. We tip out enough people. I have a lot of people argue that if I refuse to tip out more, then I should look forward to line cooks burning my table's food, being slow on purpose or ruining it in some way, simply to spite me and mess with my tips. I think this just shows how shady some people can be, and cut their own noses off despite their own faces. Why would you want your restaurant to not succeed? Do you not know that a lot of servers across the country get a $0 paycheck? Because they make tipped minimum wage of $2.13 an hour, or a few cents more. 3. So I come in for my brunch shift today, to hear 2 people called out. Good luck, team. One of them ended up coming in sick and powering through, but we were still one short. The next good news is that I have a party of 25 in the back room later. There's something of a curse on that room. It encourages people to behave like they're not in a public restaurant, but at a house party or something. I'm talking like getting up to mingle, changing seats constantly, generally being unruly and loose in the way you wouldn't in a public restaurant. And of course, have their 20 split checks straight at the end. Every party I've had in there has been a pain in the ass. People think they're VIPs with a private room or something. Fast forward a couple of hours as the first few show up. I get the news that it's actually 35, because the kids are going to be at another table in the main restaurant. And of course, it's on me to know whose kid goes with which parent's check. A few of them are seated, and I start them on their first round of bottomless mimosas. I'm already getting massively high maintenance and trashy vibes. As I'm dropping off the last 2, one falls off the tray onto this lady's bag on the floor. In my years in the industry, I've spilled a drink on someone twice before and seen coworkers do it a few times too. People have always been understanding that we're human and shit happens. If anything, they feel bad for you and you get a better tip. I've never seen someone really be mad about it until now, that is. She immediately starts yelling about her bag. I apologize and run to get a rag. I tell the GM and he goes to try to put out the fire. Turns out it was a real $3,000 Louis Vuitton bag that she took to eat with her small children in tow. What could go wrong? She's furious enough to demand a new server, to my great relief. I'm nothing short of thrilled to not be taking this table, although I did feel terrible for my coworker who was thrown to the wolves. My GM assures me that I'm not in trouble. It happens. As I blissfully continue my shift in another section, I see the carnage unfold in the back room. My poor coworker running back and forth, getting round after round of shots. At 1 p.m., while out with their children. It took over an hour after they finally arrived to even get their food order in. Lots of dishes are being sent back. They single-handedly sent the kitchen over the edge, and the restaurant descended into chaos with 40-minute wait times on food. As I'm getting ready to clock out, they've been there for over 3 hours, and my poor coworker is on the verge of tears, realizing he will have to go in and ask everyone what they had to resplit the check, because they moved around too much and made things more complicated. Owing the guy a drink doesn't even come close. I owe him a bottle of something nice for the psychological damage of this party. This wasn't an ordinary bad table. This will be one of those ones you remember years later bad. 4. Been at this place for almost a year now, and in the last few months we have promoted one of our bartenders to management. It has not gone well. We used to really like this guy when he was a bartender, but ever since his promotion, none of us can stand him anymore. The servers, other managers, we hate him now. Except our other bartenders, you will see why in a second. Since he has been manager, I've already had 3 incidents with the guy of him being an entitled righteous asshole. Incident 1. I had almost all credit card tips and only 2 cash tables. So, obviously, he would owe me quite a bit of money at the end of the night, right? Nope, he tells me I owe the restaurant money, which I know is impossible. I ask him to double-check the paperwork. He's already had multiple glasses of wine by this point and refuses to check the paperwork, and proceeds to tell me I must have given out the wrong change, because he can't be incorrect. I argue and say there's no way. End up going home with only $20. I had to go above management and ask our GM to recount the same drawer and go over all my paperwork. Turns out I was right and he owed me $140. Got my money 2 days later. Incident 2. I had a table with a large check and kept noticing shit being comped off my check. It went from a $155 check to $115. I was like, WTF. I kept removing the comps as the service continued, but they kept being put back on. The whole time, Mr. Manager is nowhere to be found. Before I hand my table their bill, I remove the comps again and give them the full check with no comps and the $155 total. I wait a few minutes by the computer and I see Mr. Manager talking to my table. He walks up to me and explains that I forgot to ring in their appetizer. I didn't, and they ate it. I tell him that. Then he says they complained that they got bad service, which I know is impossible. I checked on them multiple times and they never complained and seemed genuinely happy with me. At this point, I walk up to my table and I ask them if everything was okay, and apologize and say I wasn't aware they weren't satisfied with today's service. They looked at me very confused and said everything was great, my service was amazing, and the food was perfect. And they proceed to tell me how they just popped in to see my manager, because he was an old friend of theirs. Now I know the truth. I confront my manager and he immediately gets on the defensive and proceeds to apologize the rest of the night. My table only had to pay $115 instead of the $155, and they only left me a 20% tip for the $115, not the $155. Incident 3. On a slow day, he only set the bar tables and didn't seat us servers anything. Finally, one of us called him out and he gave us a few tables. His excuse being, "Neil wanted to sit at the bar." Anyways, thanks for listening to my rant and screw that guy. 5. I work at a fast food joint. For context, our store has 2 windows, one for collecting and the other to hand out food. They also have 2 bright yellow poles on either side, so it's not hard to miss. At least I didn't think. This past week or so, I've had an increase in people driving past this window and to the food one. This causes issues, especially in rushes, but yesterday it caused an issue I had yet to experience. I wasn't working drive-through, but I had a clear line of sight of the second window. I was slicing tomatoes when I hear a loud honk. I immediately drop my tomatoes and look at the window. Normally, if a customer honks, they're mad. Someone forgot something or their food was made wrong. As the manager, I have to go play peacekeeper. I make eye contact with the woman sitting there who has a deer in the headlights look, and she peels away. Definitely confused. Someone doesn't honk for no reason, and I know my crew hadn't talked to her, since I had been the closest member of staff anyway. I dip into the front. I try to find someone to tell me what happened. All 3 of my front people are crowded around the first window. I look at them and say, what happened with that lady? As if they were waiting to present me with this glorious scene. They all immediately scuttle behind me. A hilarious sight, as I am the smallest person on staff. I don't need an explanation at this point. A truck sat in my window. The front was an absolute mess. I honestly wouldn't have trusted it to turn on myself. My crew were whispering behind me about how mad the driver was going to be. He was getting out, and I was being pushed towards him. I brace myself. He takes a second to look at it, then looks at me and chuckles. That was crazy. I relax a little bit and smile. Did she back into you? Yep, I guess she missed the window and didn't see me. This causes both of us to laugh. His truck is huge. It was a pickup, but lifted and definitely a bit bulkier than what I normally see. I'm not a car person, so that's the best description you'll get. Its engine was so loud he actually had to turn it off before he even stepped out so we could hear him talk. She also was in a little bug. There's no way she could have missed him. At this point, I switch back into manager mode. I ask him if he'd like us to speak with his insurance company. Would he like me to keep his info in case she comes back later? At least, let me give you a discount. He said no to everything I offered. Honestly, I can't even tell where she hit me. This thing's had so many accidents, I only use it for work. Good thing I'm on my break. That's a relief to hear. Though he insisted on paying for all his food, I accidentally forgot his fries were smalls. Uh-oh. Made the large and they're already in the bag. For health reasons, I can't pull them back out. You enjoy. I wish this were where the story ended. Next day, I'm in the office doing manager stuff when there's a knock on my door. I look up. I've worked with my crew long enough to know when someone just met a Karen. Uppy? This lady up at my window. I'm already up and walking to the front. I didn't hear what the lady's issue was, but I already know it's gonna be something stupid and annoying. I look out the window and think, that woman looks familiar. Wait, I recognize that blue bug. Uh-oh. I open the window. Hey, what seems to be the issue here?
I came through here yesterday.
Okay.
I ordered but never got my food. I want it now.
That's strange. Do you have a receipt?
No, but I know I paid.
Side note, she definitely didn't pay. Only managers can delete orders, which I had to do when she drove away. I'm sorry, ma'am, but I can't help you without a receipt.
But I already ordered my food yesterday and I paid. I want it now.
Did I mention I'd been here for about 8 hours straight at this point? The nice professional facade was starting to crack. Ma'am, if what you're saying is true, you would have gotten your food yesterday.
Well, I didn't. Either give me my food or a refund.
I can't do that, ma'am.
If you don't give me my food right now, I'll call your corporate office and have you fired.
Oh no, how scary. I'm the only person they found who's willing to get up early enough to open their store, so these threats don't even bother me. They do make me lose all respect for the customer, though. I take a breath and put on my best grin. I look her in the eyes and say, please do. I'd love a reason to show them our security footage from yesterday. We had an accident happen, and the guy wouldn't let me call the cops. But if corporate saw, they'd have no choice. I just feel so terrible that happened. Her face whitened. I continued to grin. She started to sputter, and suddenly I became concerned, maintaining eye contact the whole time. Now that I mention it, the other vehicle was a blue buggy, just like yours. Oh, I hope the cops don't get confused and think it was you. That would be terrible. I kept the look on my face as we stared at each other in silence until she drove away. Since that guy, anytime a customer gets mad at me, I just think about him. Sadly, my work is in a more meth-central location, so I have lots of crazies come through. I remind myself how terrible that situation could have been if he was another crazy. And suddenly, Karens aren't that bad. Hey everybody, Hellfreezer here, and thank you very much for listening to Spinning Plates, episode 182. And thank you very much to everybody who allowed me to use their stories in this video. Before you go, please click the like button and send the video to a friend or family member. Alright, bit of business before we get to Hellfreezer's question of the day. I did promise myself this year I would be a better promoter for myself, so I'm going to do that accordingly. If you would like to support the channel, there are a number of ways you can do that. On every video, there's a tip jar. If you look just below it, you'll see a little heart with a $sign. That's the tip jar. You can do that on any video. There's a similar thing during streams also. You can support me through Patreon. There is a link in the description that takes you to that. And if you'd like to get yourself some nice Hellfreezer merch, then click on over to the store and take a look to see if anything appeals to you. I will be cleaning the store up a little bit soon. There's some of the older designs that I'm going to be removing just to keep the store a little bit neater. And of course, I'd like to say a big thank you to everyone who has given any and all support over the years. You help keep the lights on around here, and well, that's getting increasingly more difficult in the UK because apparently power companies can just rate that. No, we're not going to go on a rant about that. This is a food video. Food is good. There we go. Okay, thank you for listening to that, and now let's move right along to Hellfreezer's question of the day. What is, as it's a food video, we'll keep it on brand. What is one type of food that is always good, whether it's the cheaper version, the fancy version, or something you make at home, something you buy at a restaurant or like a food truck or whatever? It is just always good. I'm going to say hamburgers, specifically cheeseburgers, because I've made them with all sorts of different types of burgers myself. I've made them with cheaper ones, fancier ones, cheaper cheese, fancy cheese, lettuce, different sauces, and it's always a comforting kind of food. There's some things that it depends on when you get it and they're just not that great, but generally speaking, a cheeseburger does not disappoint. Another thing I will mention is I've yet to have a Scotch egg, and I hope everybody knows what that is. It's basically an egg covered with like meat, like pork, then covered in breadcrumbs, and then they deep fry it. And they're very, very yummy. It's like a snack kind of food in the UK. And I've never had a bad one. And they're all kind of unique. They've got their own different blend of like flavorings and spices in them. But it's something that's always consistently good. Well, actually, no, correction. The only time I had a bad one was when one of the local supermarkets, they changed their packaging. And it was actually the packaging that smelled kind of funny, so it made the food not so good. But they fixed that now, because I stopped buying them for a while, and I accidentally bought one without thinking. And I was like, oh, wait a minute, that's back to normal. Great, so I can actually buy them from them again, because Scotch eggs are very yummy. But you might have other foods that you enjoy. Let me know what you think in a comment below. Okay, and with that, I'm going to head off for now. So until next time, thank you very much for listening, and take very good care of yourselves.